Well, thank you to everybody so much for joining us. I'm Sari Karp. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainability Matters. We are the environmental conservation nonprofit that has organized this webinar with a couple of our very good friends, Pat Felling and Mike Neese, local recycling experts from the Shenandoah Valley, where we are based, and both gentlemen that our organization has worked with on a multitude of projects. I think we've probably known Pat in the Shenandoah County landfill the longest. Started with doing a recycling tour called Dump Day a few years ago, and he gave us an amazing tour of the wastewater treatment plant and also of the landfill, and are now doing one of our flagship projects, is in its pilot stage at Shenandoah County Landfill, making trash bloom, planting pollinator habitat on top of landfill trash cells. And so we are very, very much delighted that Pat and his team out there, including Rachel, who is doing double duty here. Wave at everybody, Rachel. She's both a Sustainability Matters volunteer and a Shenandoah County landfill employee, have been so supportive of that project. Mike has participated in a number of our events as well, come down from the city of Winchester, where he's based, to participate in our big Earth Day Shenandoah event a couple years ago, almost 2 years ago this week, actually. And we've got some fun stuff coming up with him that we will tell you about later in a couple weeks, composting education together with the city of Winchester, which is open to everybody and is online. Both of these guys are fantastic experts in recycling, and the professionals in this field. A lot of us care very much about recycling and the environment. These two live it every day. Pat has been with Shenandoah County since 2012 and is currently working 2 jobs, overseeing both the solid waste department and the water treatment program. So basically solid waste and liquid waste. He came to Shenandoah County with over 20 years experience and master's degrees in public administration and environmental science, which we think made him especially open to environmentally progressive programs like making trash bloom. Pat and his wife actually live up near Mike in Frederick County, Virginia, and they enjoy hiking the Massanutten and Blue Ridge trails with their pair of black labs. They have some new pets as well, having recently installed mason bee houses. I'm not sure if the bees are going to go hiking, though. I think they're probably going to stay home because they're pretty busy at this time of year. And they have one grown daughter who recently moved back to the area. Mike has worked for the city of Winchester. He's, interestingly, I think also, this was maybe not in his bio, but I happen to know this. He was born in Shenandoah County, where Pat works, and grew up there, and now works for the city of Winchester, has since 2004, and he's overseen recycling there since 2006. He's got a degree in sustainable business, and among many, many other things that he has done in Winchester, he has started 7 community gardens and served as a director of the local soil and water conservation district. He has pets numbering in the several thousand, rapidly expanding. They include 3 cats, 1 dog, all spoiled rescues, a school of fish, and an indoor worm farm, and now also include a beehive. And some of Mike's pets, the Wrigley variety, are going to be making an appearance in a few weeks at our composting events, we hope. In terms of humans, he has a wife of 16 years, clearly a very patient woman, because I happen to know that Mike used to compost in his living room. So our hearts go out to Mike's wife, and also to his 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl that he admits to doing his best to embarrass every day. So those are our 2 panelists, and we are basically going to run this as a moderated discussion. So I'll be asking them some questions that are based on questions that we get a lot from people. We are doing this panel because we get so many questions about recycling from people, particularly about why the rules are changing. And, why can't I recycle XYZ anymore. Can't you go and yell at the city for us? And so we're here partly, not so that you all can yell at the cities, but so that we can explain why these rules are changing and what's really going on, and get behind some of the myths and really figure out the answers to some of what makes recycling a deeply confusing subject. Right. So one of the questions that we get is sort of what really happens when I recycle something? You know, from the time that I go to the convenience center and I drop my plastic bottle into the recycling bin, what happens to it after that? And also, how does this differ for metal or cardboard? So, Mike, I think you'd probably be somebody who would know the answer to that.
And my answer is going to be a little bit different than some of the other municipalities represented, because we run a curbside collection program that's dual stream. Paper and cardboard goes on one truck, bottles and cans go on the other truck. And then those trucks go to two different material reclamation facilities, MRFs. Then each of the streams are separated out. The plastic bottles, ones, twos, steel, aluminum, tin cans. They each get separated out, and then they will get baled and go to different manufacturers. The paper and cardboard, I'm realizing now, I believe I told you Maryland the last time I talked about this. We were going direct to Maryland paper. And a few weeks ago, there's been a change in recycling, shockingly. Locally here in Winchester, we have a new baling operation. So we've started going to them to get the materials baled and processed. Some of the stuff still does end up in Maryland. Some of it most of it ends up in other mills. But I think that's kind of the point of this talk, is the recycling markets are constantly changing. We just hope to have as minimal impact on our consumers as possible.
Pat, anything to add to that?
No, I like how Mike described it. It is a constantly changing situation. And what we try to do is we are kind of on the front end of the collection. We just try to make sure that as we collect it, bring it in, that we are able to pass it along to some place that eventually recycles the material.
So will the MRF then send it on somewhere else?
Yes, there's about 30 paper mills that are constantly competing for feedstock. And then the plastics can go so many different places for manufacturing, depending on what they're making. But it's also a game of supply and demand. You know, if they have more of a demand for the content to make baby diapers or to make lawn chairs, then it's going to go to different factories.
Okay. So one of the questions that we are really getting a lot in the past year is, why are plastic and glass no longer accepted for, or many types of plastic no longer accepted for recycling in my community? Some communities are asking us why glass is no longer accepted. Pat, I'm going to send this one to you, because I know almost everything was recyclable in Shenandoah County until, what, about a year ago? And then things changed.
Yeah, as Mike said, it is a law of supply and demand. And so there was a time when many different types of plastics, you see on the bottom of your plastics, or the recycle symbol with the number in it, 1 through 7. The various types of plastics had a market previously. Globally, the market for plastics has hit the floor in the last, how many years, Mike? 4 years?
Yeah, I think it started about 4 years ago. 3 is when it got bad.
Yeah. And so because that has happened, it's reduced the amount of places that are willing to accept whatever plastics we collect. And it's gotten to the point where for Winchester and for Shenandoah County, that we can only find a home for plastics that are 1 and 2, the jugs, bottles, jars made out of plastic. And so we're not able to find a place to send those other plastics that are perfectly recyclable if someone would accept them. And we simply cannot. And so as you mentioned, just a couple of years ago, we were collecting all those different plastics and sending them all for recycling, but we've lost that chain of custody there. And so now we're sending our plastics to different places, and we only are able to send the ones and twos. And to the glass, glass is very heavy. The raw material is not very expensive. It's just silica sand. And so there has to be a well-developed market in place to accept and recycle the glass. Now, I do know that there are places that have gotten the markets going. Is it Fairfax County, Mike?
Yes, they purchased a glass pulverizer, and they're turning their own glass into sand and aggregate. To that note, that is the only facility in Virginia. Most glass to be recycled not only has to go through a material reclamation facility or be collected separately, like yours was source separated before, or mine was commingled. Not only does it have to go through that process, it has to go through a beneficiation process. And Virginia, the entire state, has 0 beneficiation facilities in the entire state. So if you wanted to turn glass into specification for fiberglass, then it would go up to Pennsylvania and then back over to Inwood, West Virginia. So for it to be collected in Winchester, it's a total of 12-mile journey beginning to end, but it's making a 300-mile loop in between. The amount of diesel fuel that you're wasting in between is horrible for the emissions end, but it's also just economically not feasible. It's cheaper for them to buy the sand from Inwood, West Virginia, than to purchase the recycled glass from Pennsylvania.
And I think that's a really important issue. You know, the fact that it is supply and demand, that this is a market. And unless the market is subsidized heavily by the taxpayers, then the localities are limited to what they can sell, or you know, give away what somebody will take from them.
Oh, yeah.
And you can only recycle that, right?
Yeah.
So that really leads us to our next question, which is, why do recycling rules vary so much by locality? I mean, this is something that for us as an organization that targets, you know, about 8 different counties in Virginia and has a reach beyond that to other states and other regions, we have to be very careful when we give recycling tips and say, well, plastic bags aren't recyclable. Well, they are some places, but not in others. Why is that? Why is there so much variance?
Well, a lot of it does come down to the markets. As Mike just mentioned, Fairfax is the only locality that is able to repurpose glass in the way that they're doing. Shenandoah County, we do collect it, but what we do is we actually mix it with our clay, crush it, mix it with our clay to put on our daily cover for the landfill cells. And so we're able to reuse it, but not in the same way as Fairfax is. And so you see that each locality is able to find the home for their recyclables wherever they can. And so right now, even though Shenandoah County and Winchester are very close in space, we send our recyclables to different places, depending on which is the most profitable or least costly to the community.
Yeah, Patrick, do you have a baler down at your facility or a compactor?
Baler, yeah. So we've been baling almost all of our recyclables for the past year or so, and our baler crashed on us, and so we were down altogether. So we were scrambling to find a way to send materials out, and so we ended up doing was we would pack cardboard and paper into a trailer with what's called a walking floor. The floor moves to unload whatever's the contents in the trailer. So we were loading that and we were paying $1,000 a week to haul that to a recycler, the same place that Winchester is now giving their material to, I do believe, or selling it to, hopefully.
Yes, and ours, we don't have a baler, and all of our material goes on the trucks. And our trucks are then used Monday and Tuesday for recycling. Same trucks are used for yard waste on Wednesday. Same trucks for trash on Thursday and Friday to help keep our municipal costs low. But that means whatever we put on a truck Monday and Tuesday must get off of that truck Monday and Tuesday, because we're picking up an entirely different material. We don't have anywhere that we would be able to store it, and we don't have a way to bale it to make it storable.
So you see that each locality is handling the materials in whatever way works the best. There's no central system for handling that. When we're able to bale our cardboard and paper again, we would send it south, not north, because that is where we're getting the best value for our community. And so each locality just does what they can. I guess if there was, say, a statewide system put in place to support large scale and regional recycling of all these different materials, things would look a lot more similar locality to locality. But as it is now, each one's just kind of scrapping by to get done what they can. What it comes down to.
I have two questions for you that are coming in. One of them is saying plastic bags that are recycled at Lowe's and Walmart, like what happens with those? And then the other question, some of the questions you're going to get to later, but another question is, in the current climate, if I have an option of glass bottles or plastic, which is the best to buy? I know these were all loaded questions.
Mike, you want to handle the plastic bags, and I'll take the second question.
Sure. Plastic bags. Now, I don't know for sure because I don't know exactly where you're from, but odds are they're passing through a facility up my way called Trex, which makes alternate decking material. At one time, 90% of the plastic bags that were recycled in the entire United States of America were going through their facilities. I'm not sure what that percentage is now. That's been a few years back, but odds are that's where your plastic bags are going. They're becoming deck material. They use the scrap sawdust as well as the scrap recycled plastic films, the stretchy films, combine them together and make a lumber-like product.
So to the question of plastic or glass, if your locality is able to find a way to repurpose the glass, then hopefully it would be a 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Something to keep in mind is that when glass is disposed of, it is inert. It does not rot. It does not create any pollution. It's a rock in the shape of a bottle, and so it is not polluting. It does take up space in landfills, which can be very pricey, but it doesn't create a source of pollution. The plastics, if you are confident that the plastic is getting to a recycler, and this is something that you really want to do, you want to make sure that when you are finished using the container, it's going to get recycled, then that could be the option for you.
If I could jump on that one a little bit too, some other things to consider are just stop using single-use materials. Okay. If we're talking about a plastic water bottle, there's absolutely no need for that. Yeah, don't get a single use. Get something that you're able to reuse. If that means glass and repurpose and reusing the glass, do so. Plastic has a lot of benefits. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Plastic has a lot of benefits. It's done a lot of great things for the world, especially in the healthcare industry. However, microplastics are a big concern, and that happens whether the plastics are landfilled, whether they are recycled, whether they sit on a shelf for 5 years or 2 months before they're purchased. They make up a vast majority of what's in the ocean in that plastic gyre. They can be found everywhere on the earth. On the top of Mount Everest, you will be breathing in atmospheric microplastics. So I tend to fall on the side of just eliminate the single use entirely.
And I think now as we come out from from ordering everything from takeout, because I would order takeout because I wanted to support my local restaurants. And then I'd get home and I'd feel bad because I couldn't recycle that. So hopefully we're going to move out of that. And the stuff they give us will be recyclable, cardboard instead of styrofoam, or less plastic. But
yes, exactly. And talk to the people you're purchasing from and say, hey, instead of these single-use clamshells and disposable plastics, would you switch to a paper, a cardboard, a compostable? They need to know that's what their consumers want.
Mm-hmm. We have a number of questions about localities. Somebody had a question about what happens to glass when it goes into Frederick County, and somebody else had a question about Augusta. Who could you, because I don't think we're going to get to all of these individual county questions, but moving forward, Michael and Pat, what would you tell people to do? Like who can they get this information from?
I would start with the municipality. If you're not familiar with that contact, the Virginia Recycling Association is another good one. It's got the contacts for all the different municipalities in there. If you have a private hauler, starting with them. So kind of the beginning of it is who's picking up your recycling. That's the one you want to contact.
Yeah.
Can the Amazon Prime envelopes, the bluish ones that with the stretchy stuff, can they be recycled? She's asking for Montgomery County, but it could be like a general, like what do you do with the envelopes with the plastic stuff on the inside? I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that either. I guess if they happen to be made of the same material that plastic bags would be made out of, that would be an option.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's a plastic product or a paper plastic mix that they're referring to. If it's a paper plastic mix, they'd have to separate the plastic from the paper. And if the plastic is that stretchy kind, if you pull on it, it either stretches or it tears. If it stretches, then that's a plastic film that could go with the plastic bags in most locations. Definitely double check with your location. If you're on a single stream recycling program and they mix their plastics and paper together, odds are the machines are not going to separate that material. I'm not familiar with any MRFs that have that technology, so you would still have to separate those two. Otherwise, it would go to the MRF and then go to trash.
All right, so our next general question, and we've started to head into this topic already, I think, is why is recycling required and all types of recyclables accepted in other states in various parts of the country, but not here in Virginia? What do you think it would take to change that? Right.
Well, two parts to that question. We can mandate and make any laws that we'd like. I mean, that's what our legislators do, and that's what we as the general public contact them for. I'm not a big fan of legislating behavior. I think you find that in the places that mandate recycling or other behaviors, people do it out of fear of either a fee, a fine, or some sort of penalty, and then they don't do it well. California is one of my favorite examples because they've a very huge, robust recycling program, and the volume and percentage looks amazing. I think last I checked on them, it was 75% is what they were diverting from landfills into the material reclamation facilities. And just a couple months ago, of that 75%, 30% to 35% of it was trash. So it still went back to the landfill. So they still only ended up slightly more percentage-wise than what Virginia or the East Coast was doing. It's just how they were looking at those numbers. And part of that is because it's mandatory programs. It keeps their trash fees lower over there. But if they're not doing it right, they're just messing up somebody else's recycling.
Pat, anything to add?
I think some of it comes back to what we've already discussed, and that is it depends on what's happening regionally, locally. If a state has got the capacity, like Fairfax County does, to get the quantities it needs for the quantities of scale to recycle and reuse, repurpose glass, then they can make it happen. But it takes markets, it takes political will, and as Mike has said, sometimes there are individuals that the community that supports it, or they don't support it.
So a huge part of the problem seems to be that individuals are recycling wrong. And I know that, we've talked with both of you before about aspirational recyclers. People like probably many of us here tonight who wish everything was recyclable and think, well, it might be. I'm just going to throw it in and maybe they'll figure out what to do with it. So what is your take on that, and kind of what are the biggest recycling mistakes that cause you and your staffs more hassles and make it harder to recycle?
Well, first of all, I have to admit to being an aspirational recycler in the past. I've really, you don't want to throw it away, but because of the business I'm in, I'm coming to realize that I'm creating a problem. I'm not helping anything. I'm making things more difficult. I'm making recycling harder, not better, by doing that. And so I think a lot of us, for folks who want to recycle, they look at a product and they say, hey, you know what? This could be recycled. I know it can. But unfortunately, there may not be a market. There may not be a pathway for that product to get recycled. I tell you a little story. As Mike mentioned, our recycling baler went down. And when it went down, we were no longer able to bale any plastic. And plastic, as you know, is quite bulky, so we couldn't store it. We were able to collect aluminum cans, and we were able to crush them with our equipment and store them, so we were able to save those. Cardboard and paper, where we found a way to ship it out, but plastic, we did not find a way to recycle. And so as Rachel knows, she was contacted by a woman in our community who called her up and said, I've got bags and bags and bags of plastics that I've been waiting for your baler to get fixed. And I've got them in my car, in my garage. Where else was she storing them, Rachel?
Rachel, you're muted. You got to unmute, Rachel.
She has them stored out in her little shed out behind her house.
And so she was begging us, can I please just take some in and you store it somewhere in your landfill until the baler gets fixed. And as much as it hurt us, all those plastics got landfill during that period and still are until we can get the baler fixed. But the fact of the matter is, there's no pathway at this point in time for us to handle that. So we are going to get a new baler. Actually, we're buying a new baler. And so we're going to get it fixed. We're going to get baling, we're going to get packing it. And so this will be a blip in time. And so we just want to do everything we can to recycle, but we have to realize that if whatever your local custom program is, right where you are, whatever they accept, if you would just give them exactly what they're asking for, it would help the program work the best, cost less, and end up creates a lot less waste when you do that. Because we have people that recycle, they put their recyclables in bags, which we ask them not to do, but they put them in bags. We get a bag. So when our guys go to sort what's in the bag, they open it up. And if they say half of the plastics in there are not recyclable, the whole bag gets thrown away when they're sorting. Okay, they don't go and reach in and pick out every little bottle and jug because we don't have the time for that. And so by doing what they've done, they've actually created more trash and caused less recycling.
You used a phrase to me once, Pat, that I think it really stuck in my mind. It was, when in doubt, throw it out. That's actually a more responsible way to recycle.
And I think the way I said that to you, I said, it hurts me a lot to say this.
I know it. And I remember the look on your face when you said that. But it's, and it is heartbreaking. I will say that I feel for the woman who called you, Rachel, because I have bags and bags and bags of plastic as a Shenandoah County resident. And it's a good thing that I never really used my garage anyway, because it is now getting full of all of my plastic. And it's actually scaring me how, even as somebody who tries to be conscious about not buying single use more than I have to, how much plastic I have accumulated in the short time that your baler's been broken. And it will be coming by the carload once you get a new baler. So, yeah. Mike, do you have anything to add about kind of the worst things that you see people doing or that you wish that people wouldn't do to make your life a little bit easier?
Yeah, I'll definitely piggyback on plastic bags. That does make things difficult. Also for us, we get a lot of paper in plastic bags. Now, the paper is going to a paper mill, to a paper facility. The plastic bag has no home there, no use there whatsoever. So we need to either remove the plastic bag and try and leave it on the curb where it's just going to blow into the trees and the bushes and become litter. We leave the whole material behind, or if we pass it through to the recycler where it's going to gum up his machines and then it's going to become trash. So plastic bags there's a place for them. Typically it's at your grocery store, not curbside, and in most places not drop off. So far as bottles and cans, still getting glass bottles in there, and that's rough. We catch them when we can. When we can't, it goes on the truck, it gets compacted, and now whether it's the steel, the tin, the aluminum, the plastic, it's going to have little bits of broken glass in it. So when it goes to its home, that glass is a trouble for the next level of manufacturer. One of the other places I was on for recycling, they were doing single stream recycling, and they were having a very big difficulty with the glass and the paper because their paper mill was making toilet paper, and having broken glass going to the toilet paper factory was not ideal. So just putting that out there, we do want the right materials in the right place. The other one I get a lot of syringes. People that are using needles will put them in bleach bottles, soda bottles, thicker bottles, and then be responsible and recycle the bottle. No, not if the bottle is full of syringes. And food waste, people putting materials in there, that's my personal pet peeve. It's not as bad as the others, but the bottles aren't empty. They still have a good bit of ketchup or other materials in there. When it gets compacted in the truck, you're just ruining everything it's getting in contact with, because that ketchup is spraying over the entire load. That's one of my personal pet peeves, mostly from Apple Blossom. For years, I've been trying to get standalone units for recycling, and I might get a 55-gallon bag that's all plastic bottles, especially at the races. Great. And then somebody throws a milkshake on top, or a funnel cake, or a dirty diaper, and that's done. That whole bag is trash now.
So I've got to ask both of you, what is the weirdest thing that you have ever seen anybody try to recycle that you can talk about on a public forum?
We had 5 or 10 pounds of liver put into one of our recycling containers once. So I don't see what the thought was in that person's mind, where that, plastic goes here and liver went in with the plastic.
Yuck.
Yeah.
That's bad. Mike?
Turkeys. Yeah, no, not the other thing. Whole turkeys. I've had a surprising amount of paper containers with dead animals inside, like house pet animals. I don't really know.
That's up there. That's up there.
Yeah, like once is a fluke, but once it happens 2 or 3 times, I don't know what that's about.
Wow. So, okay, do we have any questions, guys,
Yes.
for Mike and Pat?
Yes. How much waste is too much? Is a pizza box okay? Because a pizza box has grease on it. Go.
When in doubt.
And again, this won't go for everywhere in the world, but pizza box is one of my favorites. I get this frequently. So step 1, when you order pizza, if your pizza place isn't putting a sheet of wax paper, aluminum foil, or something of the nature down between the food and the cardboard box, first off, gross. I delivered pizza for many years. Gross. Second off, that the food, the cheese, the grease from the meats, all of that is going onto the cardboard, which makes it a wonderful thing to compost or to use in your gardens, but is a terrible thing to put in for the recycling for paper. That, again, a good rule of thumb with paper recycling is think of, if this was going to turn into toilet paper, would I be happy with that? I forget what the first part is. The pizza box has really got me.
Okay.
And
I
here's a
have-
question for you. Go ahead.
I have one. How is paper recycled? And how should the consumer sort paper for recycling?
Patrick, again, you're going to be different than I.
Yeah.
Here in Winchester, all grades and types of paper, OCC, cardboard are all collected together. It's a commingled stream. So all paper goes together here in Winchester. You want to check with your local recycling places to see what's different there. You may be on single stream. There may be some exclusions to paper. I saw something come across a chat briefly about cutting the tops off of the pizza boxes. Yes, do that if it doesn't have any of the food or cheese or things on there. So for us, it's all mixed together, which means that it's going to be recycled at a lower grade. When paper's recycled, the fibers become loose each time you do it. I don't have many examples of paper in front of me, but if you can think of your office paper versus a tissue, they're both paper, but that looser fiber is because it's been recycled and processed so many times. It eventually gets to the point where it can't be recycled into anything anymore. It's a downcycling process. But sorry, I'll go off on a tangent there. Point being, it's taken from the highest grade, the tightest fibers, and then continued down the stream. But for our program, because a lot of it is already mid-range to lower, all of that kind of steps down. Whereas in Patrick's program, those materials are separated out. So,
actually, no, Mike, we also commingle. We do
commingle. Hey, okay. Yeah, it's more cost effective, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. Well, because most of what the material we collect is not from the curb, we collect it at convenient sites. And so our citizens go to our sites and they go and they sort it for us into our containers. And we just have made the decision that we're not going to ask our citizens to sort paper from cardboard. It also helps logistically with us not to have separate containers. But if they were to separate the cardboard from the paper, we would be able to get a much better price for whatever material we're able to ship out. I mean, there's times when we get paid for it. There's times when we pay to get rid of it. But in any case, the more separated it is, the better price you get. But so right now we're shipping it out, and I would say that of all the material we collect, I would say it's I mean, the paper and cardboard, it's probably 60% paper and 40% cardboard, which is not a good mix. If it was 80% cardboard, 20% paper, we would be better off. But the balance of mix that we have makes it a challenge for sometimes to find somebody who will accept it at all.
Yes, and just to piggyback on you there a bit, I remember a few years back where the OCC, the cardboard was going at a higher rate per ton than aluminum, which is normally your highest value commodity. But I remember months and months on end that per ton cardboard was just the top performer. And it's not like that now.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I think I have one, but
we have a number of questions about plastic, and one of them that was interesting from our friend Paula is how efficient is plastic recycling and how much pollution does it cause to melt it down and repurpose it?
Mike, you'll have to take this one.
All right, so it depends on how it's being processed. There's a new technology out there called advanced recycling, and it's specific for plastics, especially those 3 through 7s, and it turns it into like a diesel fuel, jet fuel type of petroleum product. So that one is fairly efficient. It has a lower rate of the microplastics. However, it is creating a fossil fuel. So there's that trade-off to it. You have to remember that at the base, all plastics are a petroleum product. I mean, if you're trying to drive a more fuel efficient vehicle, you're trying to cut down on your lane miles, you're trying to cut down on your carbon emissions, but you're using single-use plastics, you're missing a big chunk of your imprint. So how efficient is it in other ways? There's also, I believe, a company in Richmond that came out of Israel, and they make a bioplastic, and it's, if I remember correctly, it's all plastics as well as some organics to make containers. That one again, medium rate with the microplastics. However, the resulting product, I'm not sure it can be recycled ever again. Once you've mixed it with the organics, yes, you found a use for it, but if that tote or container breaks, then I don't know what you're left with then, but maybe a broken container. Plastics are a tricky thing. Plastic straws were a really popular thing to try and ban and eliminate. Personally, I don't use any straws, but part of the reasons we have straws was for people that have different physical limitations that couldn't consume beverages, especially in public places. And this was a good aid for them. So if you don't need a straw, don't use a straw. And that goes for all plastics. If you don't need that single-use thing, don't do it. You can create the plastic market and the recycling market just by refusing to purchase those materials. When you go into a store, styrofoam, you've purchased something, you have the cardboard box, you can take it home in, you can recycle the cardboard box, you have all this styrofoam that you can't recycle anywhere, leave it at the store. Leave it as the retail.
Yep, look at your packaging.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, we'll take some more questions in a minute, but that's a good segue into our next question, which is kind of a question that we have for the panelists. And I think also that the panelists would like to hear your opinion on, which is what else can individuals do? What can each of us do to help to make this a better process? And so I'd like to hear what Mike and Pat think we can do, but I know that Mike and Pat would also like to hear some ideas from you guys. What are you hearing about? What are you doing? What are your thoughts? So please go ahead and put those in the chat. So in the meantime, Pat, do you want to?
Sure. There was a discussion earlier about reaching out to, finding out what it is that you can do. And so reaching out to wherever it is you're sending your recyclables, reach out to that organization that probably they have a website that says this is the best way to get it done, and learning how the program works and working with the program to do the recycling is going to be a big one. I think I'm going to steal a little bit of Mike's thunder and say, don't buy something in the first place, minimize your consumption in the first place so you don't have to find a home for it. If you didn't buy it in the first place, you wouldn't have to recycle it. But that's, there's a couple of ways that individually we can help. And certainly don't quit recycling, don't stop recycling, but just find a way that you are working to help the recycling process be more successful.
Mike?
Sorry, I was thinking really loud. I think the most important thing that we can do is not get overwhelmed. You start looking at trade-offs of materials. Like I've been pretty hard on plastics, but if you look at the paper alternatives, they use more water as opposed to more of the fuel and petroleum sources. So you can easily become discouraged and just everything's bad. Everything's negative. Everything's too hard. Don't fall down that trap. If your concern is solid waste, which I imagine it is, which is why you're here, tip your trash can out 1 week before it goes curbside and just do a quick inventory. What do you have in there that you can reduce? Do I use a lot of paper towels that could be something that could be washed and reused? Or do I have a lot of food waste in here? Do I need to plan my meals better or find foods that my kids will eat? Yeah. There's a bunch of different things, but also don't try to do them all at once, because then you get overwhelmed. You start trying to weigh the pros and cons of every material and everything. Just pick the big one. That's the low-hanging fruit. And then if you still have energy and time, go to the next, go to the next, go to the next. Something that I've learned in life is everything has a cost, whether it's a financial cost or a time cost. And you have to prioritize those yourself or you'll become overwhelmed.
I think that's really vital, and something that Sustainability Matters is a fairly new organization. We're a little over 3 years old at this point. And I think that for me, the thing that is most notable that I have learned in the past 3 years is that sustainability is a series of trade-offs. We do a lot of education on sustainable gardening and sustainable landscaping, and there are trade-offs between being completely chemical free and being completely invasive plant free. And we talk about that a lot, and a lot of these are personal choices. Are you going to drive a long distance to recycle your items, or to get fill up your own bottles at a bulk distributor? Or are you going to save the fossil fuel but have something end up in the landfill? And I feel like there's some very wrong answers to some of these questions, but there's not necessarily one right answer, and it really depends on where in the trade-offs you go. Yeah. Do you, Mike and Pat, as professionals in this field, have any particular tips? I know we already told people that Mike used to compost in his living room. I know Pat does some pretty interesting things too. Maybe not that interesting, but what are some choices that you guys make?
I'm looking. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just asking if you were first row.
So I'm looking at some of the suggestions that are popping up, and people are talking about things like repurposing what you can. And so if you find something like my wife is really, really good for reusing every plastic container that we find. And so, yeah, we have stacks and stacks and stacks of those containers ready to be used. So find a way to repurpose things. Even though for us to buy plastic bags to line our trash cans at home would cost very little. We could probably buy 1,000 of them for not very high price. We just take any grocery bags that we don't take back to the grocery store that we reuse. You carry the reusables, but when you do bring some plastic bags home, you have a way to use them. It's just finding different ways to be creative and find a way to repurpose it, keep it alive, keep it out of the landfill just a little bit longer potentially. Yeah, so that's all I would suggest.
Mike?
When I did my trash inventory at home, and this has been a decade or so back, I was surprised at the amount of food waste. Of course, my children were much younger then and much pickier eaters, and et cetera, et cetera. I also created a lot of yard waste because I'm a very avid gardener. And so that was the challenge that I took on, was composting. And as you mentioned, some indoors, because I'm an experimental person, and I needed a climate controlled to see which type of container would work best, the introduction to different insects and invertebrates. And anyhow, yes, I may have gone a little mad scientist on that one, but I have managed to get my house to zero food waste. I have a family of 4, as you mentioned, and then the 3 cats and a dog, all of us waste generating, but we still manage under 45 gallons of trash a week. There's still some things we could do, obviously, but at least zero of that is going to be food waste. That's all being used just within the house. Anything we get from the grocery store, the garden, the farmer's market, once it makes it to our house, it's going to stay there.
And Sonia's just in the chat the links to register for the composting workshops that we are doing with Mike in May. I think we are kicking off the first week of May, which we have discovered is National Composting Week. So we're excited to be celebrating that, hopefully with many of you. And it's 2 workshops, and they're both really simplifying composting. It doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be smelly. It doesn't have to be a super complicated chemistry experiment unless you're like Mike and you want it to be. But the first workshop, Composting for the Clueless, will be taught by our Deb Abercrombie from Sustainability Matters. And then Mike will be making a return appearance for DIY composter building for the Clueless. And I think some of that, Mike, is basically going to be how to use those non-recyclables, right, and turn them into a compost bin that that you can then be reducing your waste. And we felt, we've been talking about doing composting programs for a while. We've done some in different contexts in the past, but particularly since the pandemic, more people are eating at home and producing more food waste at home, and there isn't necessarily the same processes that a lot of restaurants have more opportunities to compost, or facilities already set up, sometimes pick up, and individuals often in cities don't necessarily have that, but as we will show you, you can still compost. So do we have any more questions?
Yes. Somebody had asked, are there local, like, community compost gardens? Is that a thing, or is mostly just people do it at home?
There are in some places. Harrisonburg has composting drop-offs in the city, which goes to a big commercial composter, Black Bear Composting. I think they have compost drop-offs in other places, but anywhere further north than that you guys know of?
Not that I know of. Mike's house?
Yeah. No, once you get Black Bear is located fairly south in Virginia. So once you get farther north than Harrisonburg, you're reaching the limit of what it's worth to be shipping.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple.
I know there are some places like around DC, like that will pick up your compost cab and veterans compost, but that's way further closer to the big cities for people who just can't compost at all. So
yeah. One question is, how much are your localities paid for the plastics you recycle, or do you pay to get rid of it?
Good question.
Like, what's the economics of that in general?
For Winchester, because it is commingled with plastic bottles and metal cans, we pay $105 a ton just to have them separated. So we make nothing off of that. We pay $105 per ton.
Rachel, what was it that we used to get paid for our mixed plastics about 5 years ago?
Was it like what?
25 cents a ton?
Yes. Yeah.
So that was 25 cents a ton. We got paid, and then it went down to 20, 15, 10, 5. Then we were paying to get rid of it. And when that relationship with that recycler went turn around, I think we were paying something like $150 per trailer just for them to take it away.
Yes.
Well, so that's just plastic. On aluminum, we always make money on aluminum. For a while, we made money on cardboard and paper. So the market just changes year to year, sometimes month to month, and it just depends on where the market is. We just try to find the best value for whatever we're recycling.
I got a question that says in Virginia Beach, we're told to place shredded paper in a paper bag and use the minimum of staples to close it. And she says, doesn't the bag like explode when it gets into the truck?
Yes. And that's where you want it to be open, is inside of the truck and not outside, blowing everywhere.
And then the paper, because it's in paper, it breaks down with everything else inside.
Exactly. That's the same way we ask for it here in Winchester, so that the whole truckload can be recycled instead of being processed and sorted first.
So I do my house. Here's a tough one. When citizens lobby for better community recycling, what specific resources should we be asking for? Should we lobby for regulations around single use, better recycling collection programs, public education programs, or directly for about tools and budgets,
Wow.
what would have the greatest impact?
Ooh, may I jump in on that one?
Please.
So I've just gotten out of a legislative meeting. So the first thing to do is at the state and federal level, look at which bills are up, because there are some good ones out there, and contact your representatives to support those. So that's at state and federal level. At the local level, that's when you want to lobby for the things that will support your program. If your program is similar to Patrick's, where they have a baler, but it's broken and they need a baler, lobby for the public works to get the money they need for the equipment that they need. If you're in a place like Winchester, it might be something else. So federal and state, look at the bills that are out there, support those bills. For your local, contact us and say, hey, what do you need to make this work? Or I'm unhappy that I can't recycle nuclear waste. When can you have something for nuclear waste?
I'm tired of dumping it in my backyard.
Mike's house.
With the worms. I saw that movie.
I did too.
You know what happens with insects and nuclear power?
All right. Well, as we get closer to wrapping up, any final questions or anything? Just a reminder to everybody that it is, of course, Earth Week, and this is one of our several events. On Earth Week, and Earth Day is coming up in 2 days on Thursday. So I want to wish everybody happy Earth Day. And we have another event then, as Earth Day Sustainable Business Summit, which is a half-day event covering really all aspects of sustainable business in a very approachable, communication-friendly fashion like this event. We have Route 11 Chips, Sarah Cohn from Route 11 Chips, talking about manufacturing. We have a couple of local retailers, commodity retailers, a grocer and a hardware store, who have done amazingly well in the face of big box store competition, and they're going to talk about how they manage that. And then we have a vineyard, a brewery, and a farm to table restaurant talking about local sourcing and sustainable growing. So it should be a lot of fun. And Sonia's put some links in that, and you can find them on our general on sustainabilitymatters.earth. And any final questions or final thoughts from anybody?
There's no question, but here's a comment. This is so great. Everyone in the world should sit through a program like this. So informative and valuable. I'm doing many things wrong and will be happy to do them right.
That is wonderful to hear. That's why we did this, for people like you, and to get these questions answered, because we know that so many of us care. And honestly, until Sustainability Matters began, until I started hanging with people like Pat and Mike, I knew so little. I was one of the aspirational recyclers too. And, so we're really happy to pass this on, and hope that you join us for future events and maybe become a member. We're going to run the final poll, Sonia, just to find out what people thought of this event. And again, you should be able to rewatch on Facebook and YouTube. We'll get that up as soon as we possibly can. So thank you all so much for joining us, and particularly, of course, to Mike and Pat, and to Mike's son Jackson for lending us to him on his birthday. And to all of you, we could not do these events without our amazing volunteers who help run them. Our volunteers have pivoted from doing things like running in-person plant swaps to running Zoom meetings, and hopefully we'll continue doing both as the world reopens, and continue to engage your audiences. So once again, thank you. Happy Earth Week, and we hope to see you again soon.
So I am trying hard to answer all of these questions that are still in there. I'm going to put my email address in the chat, so if I miss anybody, it's also on the city's website.
Yep, please do. Yep, put contact info too, and people can reach out directly. Absolutely. Okay, well, Funny, if most people have had the chance to vote, do you think we let everybody go and get some rest or celebrate birthdays and
See you next time.
enjoy the rest of your evenings?
Glad to be with you all.
Thank you all. Good night.